Advertising that represents everybody. Do ads reflect all of society? Do they have to? You're watching Roundtable with me, David Foster. Ads, you know, those little bits between the good programs, shoot me for saying that, are becoming increasingly diverse. But where companies have featured minorities, does it sometimes come across as disingenuous? Do they really mean it?
Who do you see when you turn on the television? Do they look like you? Over the past few years, viewers have seen more diversity in the people featured in advertising. But true representation is still out of reach. So are ad agencies merely mining a new market, or is their honest intent to represent all of society? Historically, advertising agencies were run by middle-class white men whose work mirrored their reality.
You seem to have everything, Mrs. Clark.
Now, within the industry, women make up around 30% of employees. People of black, Asian and minority ethnic backgrounds are at 12%, which is double that of 10 years ago. It's hard to say if it's a coincidence we are now seeing greater diversity in adverts. Actor Idris Elba has called for an overhaul of British broadcasting.
Let's just get more professional about this whole area. Our economy, as I said before, depends on it. Our future actually depends on it.
There's been a power shift with viewers and consumers dictating terms through market research. Lloyds Bank research in 2016 showed only 19% of ads included minorities. So it's no surprise 47% of people did not feel accurately portrayed. Brands are starting to listen. The John Lewis department store had a black family experiencing trampoline troubles in 2016. The same year, market research revealed 80% of parents liked seeing diverse families. While ad agencies realise they must move past the stereotypical depictions of diversity, they must also take care not to be diverse for the sake of it or get it wrong. In South Africa, protesters ransacked an H&M store over an ad they said was racist. It featured a black boy in a hoodie with "coolest monkey in the jungle" written on it. But it was the model, not the brand, who came under fire when Amina Khan became the first hijab-wearing woman to appear in a L'Oreal hair commercial. She pulled out after accusations she had expressed anti-Israel views in 2014 tweets. Advertising can play a positive role in societal change.
Inclusive diversity is a strength and a force that can vanquish intolerance, radicalism, and hate.
But the question remains, are brands and agencies just ticking the box or truly embracing the change? There's been progress, but advertising has a long way to go before what's on our screens mirrors our own lives.
Well, joining me at the round table, we have Malia Bouatia, an equality activist. She wants the same for everybody, I suppose that means, and former president of the National Union of Students. We have Naomi Cisse, head of innovation and diversity at Media Trust, that's a communications charity, and Layla Siddiqui, the head of diversity again at the Institute of Practitioners in Advertising. Great to have you round the table here. I mean, until I started to investigate this, I really didn't think about adverts other than being either funny or enticing. Why do they have to be something different? Do you want to start?
I guess because they've always catered for someone like you, I'd argue. In society, you see yourself in the advertisement that's been present across your television screens from, you know, a very young age, whereas for many of us, particularly those that come from Global South communities, we are absent, we are omitted from a space that we've always been a part of historically.
But why should it matter? Because you're either looking at the product,
yeah,
and thinking that's a good thing to buy, or you're thinking not interested.
Well, again,
So why does it matter who's telling you that?
because what is on our screens is supposed to relate to our reality. It's, you know, the world around us, what we know, how we connect to it. It's the same way that, you know, we argue for more diversity and effectively truth to be told in the contents of our curriculum from a school age all the way through to university. Tell the truth about who is present in society, like where the achievements lie.
Well, when it comes to baked beans, does it matter?
Absolutely.
Okay. So imagine,
It matters on every front.
imagine this, okay? I'm a white man, yep, and I'm looking at a product that's being advertised or promoted by a black man. Am I likely to say, or is there any evidence to suggest that I'm less likely to buy it because it's somebody from a different background to me?
No, I don't think there is any evidence to say that you're less likely to buy it. But the point is here is that we live in a multicultural society. And when we live in a multicultural society and we see products that are being advertised by someone who is not like you, you're less likely to feel, is that product relevant for me? For example, if we go to the L'Oreal adverts and you see white women with blonde
Amina
hair.
Khan, she said something anti-Semitic 3 or 4 years ago. She withdrew from the campaign or she was asked to leave.
Yes.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
Just to remind everybody, she was in that package.
Yes. So when I look at a L'Oreal advert, for example, I do not see somebody who has hair like mine who is saying, you're worth it. So I don't believe that that advert is actually talking to me. And plus, I don't believe that that product is good for my hair because I can't see any kind of representation that says that it is. So therefore, I won't buy a L'Oreal shampoo or conditioner. I just won't.
But would it work for you if you bought the product?
I don't know, but I don't care to. I'd rather go to someone who says to me, this absolutely works for your hair because this is your hair type. Also, if you don't see yourself represented on adverts, you feel that you're not seen, and you probably won't actually feel that.
Okay,
but somebody from another culture or from another background or who's another colour don't actually feel they're being seen by the British society or by the
more
British
important
adverts.
things to worry about.
Psychologically, that has a damaging effect, so that is a very important thing to worry about.
I would argue as well that there are more important things to talk about, but this is kind of a way that the conversation on representation and diversity has become more mainstream, that it starts with a L'Oreal advert, it starts with a baked bean advert, but really we want to move away from, you know, are we profiting as much from minority communities as we are white ones? Are we, you know, are we profiting from the opportunity of diversifying our campaigns to there is structural oppression that exists in our society. There is racism that is present, which is why we even have to talk about questions of diversity and representation to begin with. So, like, in relation to everything from deaths in police custody to the underachievement.
Are you serious? You're relating that to advertising as well?
Listen, I'm telling you that in relation to, you know, the attainment gap at schools, why are children of colour not attaining as much as their white counterparts? That is part of a wider conversation around questions of how are we omitted from the narrative.
Let's bring
just to bring
Layla.
the conversation back to marketing and advertising. I think advertisements do reflect popular culture. I think we are living in London, which is one of the most multicultural societies in the whole world. And we are blessed with an amazing creative industries in the UK. And a really good measure of how far we've come is in our portrayal of diversity in the creative work that we produce. And we do see that commercial brands that air non-stereotypically diverse executions are more likely to attract goodwill, more comment, earned media value, and social sharing. And we do think that brands are now seriously looking at trying to really reflect the audiences in the space that they belong.
But Layla, you said to my producer before this programme that people are in it just to make money. You know, they're companies. They have to sell their products. It's not the nice thing to do. It is the way that they see the world, and that's pretty logical, isn't it?
Well, I think every business, whether it's your small corner shop or whether it's a huge corporate like L'Oreal, exists firstly to sustain itself, to make profit, to make money. And I think that, you know, being inclusive and diverse is actually, of course, it is a good thing to do, but it's not just as lightweight as just that. You know, it is a business imperative. Sort of, you know, having people working on your teams from diverse backgrounds actually ensures that your creative output will be of a certain standard, and then mistakes like the ones that we keep seeing in the media wouldn't happen.
But I suppose what I'm getting at is if you had Daniel Craig trying to sell a product, James Bond, we all know who he is, or Idris Elba, possibly the next James Bond, trying to sell a product, a white man and a black man. If Daniel Craig sold more cars, and somebody could work that out, wouldn't it be sensible to have him on, or do you need to have the representation of the two of them?
Look, I think that we have to be, that like companies should be explicit. If they're going to delve into the realms of championing diversity and, you know, representation for all, our products are for everybody, in the same way that L'Oreal did, then you're going to have to deal with the political consequences of that. People are going to expect you to interrogate your own
So they were sort of
space.
effectively going, look at us, we're so good, we're doing this. And they tripped over themselves.
In the light of Black Lives Matter movements, in the light of, you know, mobilizations against Trump, in the light of, you know, everything that we've seen in relation to anti-racist struggles in the last few years, L'Oreal comes up with this, you know, like we are all one campaign, yet in each case where it has actually been challenged on the questions of white supremacy, it has failed to put their money where their mouth is in many ways. And the first one was the case of Monroe Bergdorf. And, you know, she was a queer trans black woman that was involved in their campaign. And for calling out, you know, and rightly so, the white supremacist tendencies following the Charlottesville incidents in the States, she was sacked from her position. Now, if you're going to use this woman to champion your diverse
Well,
space,
were they doing that, or were they
space?
simply saying, you know, this person, you can find out about her background, his background, whatever you want to say. You can find out about this person's background, but we're not actually going to be pushing that. Therefore, if somebody starts to intrude upon what your message is, flogging a product, then you don't really want them around anymore.
I think that...
I mean, does it have to be politically motivated, or could it simply be, look,
I think that we should have a little bit of...
have an opinion on that?
I think we should have a little bit of honesty here when we talk about diversity. There are so many brands who want to play lip service, that we are doing good for diversity because we take this one person, we put them in the advert. But really, because we want to actually tap into those markets, get their money, and increase our profit line. But is that the reason? But is that the reason why you want diversity? No. The reason why you really want diversity is to have a representation of what Britain is about in order to have inclusivity and cohesiveness.
But that presupposes
and that,
what we see and hear in the adverts.
No, but that actual inclusivity will garner extra profits because people will trust the brand.
But do you see what I'm saying, Naomi? That presupposes that we believe advertisers, and secondly, their advertisements, when they say or promote materials, when they say this is why we're doing it, why on earth should we believe them?
Well, you're right. And that's why Generation Z right now, they're putting ad blockers all over their social media because they don't believe it. So therefore, and they are probably one of the most diverse groups, generation, that we've ever had. So if advertisers don't actually raise their game, if they don't have diversity in their mid-management and senior management C-suites, actually making these decisions, if they keep on making
C-suites, I learned last week, means they're the top-level management,
yes,
correct? Yeah?
Yes.
Chief Executive, Chief
Absolutely.
Finance Officer.
If they keep on signing off these mistakes that go out there, the generation below are going to reject all advertising and start creating their own.
Can I just...
Okay, so it's in their own interest. I want to ask you if you think things are changing, and changing for the better.
I think over the last 2 years, we've seen the conversation start to get very, very strong. I think for us around the table, you know, our jobs are such that we do look at diversity and inclusiveness pretty much on a day-to-day basis. So we might sort of sit here and think, oh, progress is very slow. And yes, it is, but it's the way, you know, it is a long-term behavior change program. We do see a lot of very senior people from advertising agencies sort of now taking it upon themselves to try and address this issue, and whether it's sort of becoming more aware of the sort of data, measuring and monitoring the data of diverse teams within their own businesses, or whether it's looking at the creative output. So, you know, you have initiatives, new initiatives coming up from within the advertising industry pretty much on a monthly basis now. So we have...
Anybody talking about quota systems?
That's a very controversial
Yes.
topic.
Is that a yes?
Well, you know, people have different opinions about a quota system. I mean, organically is probably the best way so that people feel like we're not just doing it to tick
But there
a
is
box.
a serious conversation going on at the moment, and do jump in, you two here, about the fact that if X equals the number of black and ethnic minority in the country as a percentage, we should have that same percentage in advertising on a quota basis. Is that right?
I think that, like, ultimately the demands of anti-racism are not tokenism, are not creating ebony towers in an inherently oppressive society. We have to really get down to the kind of the foundations of politics.
Do answer the question, though. You really think there's a serious conversation going on about this?
That will not solve the questions of racism. That will not solve the questions of sexism or any other kind of form of oppression.
So you'd
Absolutely.
be against a quota, would you?
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that that is not the solution. First, you need to dismantle the very structures that stop those people from attaining those positions to begin with. Like I said, my interest is not filling a problematic space with brown and black faces. That is because they're going to have a horrendous time. They'll probably
Absolutely.
not evolve
So you're
or like
against-
succeed
you're against
within
it,
that
are you?
space. I am saying you need to look. No,
I'm asking
saying,
you the question.
No,
Are you against or for a
I'm
quota?
telling you not to create such binaries. I'm saying that, like, you need to look at the foundations of why those people are not in that space to begin with.
Absolutely.
And how you're going to tackle it. And like I said, filling me and mine in a space is absolutely not going to do that because I will have a horrendous time.
I mean,
what-
listen, answering, I mean, just to answer your question, I think that what always traditionally happens is that the onus of burden is on the people who are actually the ones who are subject to these, to racism, to non-exclusivity. I think we should start looking at the top and working from there downwards. We should start looking at unconscious bias. We should start looking at how people are actually employing diversity into their organizations. It's natural for people to like people who are like themselves. But therefore, you're locking out a whole lot of talent that are in people who do not look like yourself, a whole lot of thought leadership,
Why
a whole
is it
lot of...
natural to feel that way?
Because
I
you
mean,
feel
I
comfortable.
like people who think like me sometimes. I like people who disagree with me sometimes.
It's part of an unconscious bias that we have been garnered as we grow up, as a cultural thing. You see yourself, and you see yourself, for example, yourself. You see yourself on TV as being powerful, as being a CEO, as being. But you don't. Young black men probably don't see themselves as being CEOs or being,
All right. So you think it's there, and there's.
On both sides, there needs to be work.
Do you change that? And we are talking advertising here by imposing rules.
I think we change that by changing our mindset. I mean, rules, you can put in rules. I mean, they've put in loads of organizations put in rules, and it doesn't necessarily work.
I agree. I think it's a culture change program that will take a little bit of time, but I also do think that injecting diversity through your entry-level pipelines will bring
Explain to me
about...
what that means. I'm sorry. Your entry-level pipelines. What do you mean?
Meaning your
We're talking about advertising.
Yes, talking about advertising. So the creative work that you see is obviously doesn't just appear magically from nowhere. It is being done by teams of people. So if you have a multicultural team working on campaigns, you're more likely to have more insight and you're more likely to get the campaigns right. So in order to have those sort of multicultural teams, we are seeing that the new generation, as you said before, is more multicultural than it's ever been. You know, for them, they don't even look at it as an issue because they're going to schools where they're interacting with all sorts of races and everything else. So, you know, dealing with trying to encourage younger people to come in from different backgrounds into an industry that might have been operating along a certain way with certain types of people is something that we're really trying to remove the barriers to. So things like apprenticeships are absolutely fantastic. So, you know.
You both have diversity in your title. I'm going to let you speak in just a second, because I want to just say this. I want you to think about whether, in fact, you believe that either of you was perhaps employed as a form of tokenism towards diversity in jobs that involve diversity. Think about that one, and I'll talk to you.
No, I was just going to say that my worry is that becomes the ultimate goal is, you know, inject a bit of colour into all these spaces and will not only benefit from it, but further than that will be seen to be more inclusive and you know, communities of colour will be happy and all is well. And I disagree with that to a certain extent. I've seen the problems of that, of what happens, from academia to kind of organisations and charities when that is the focus. Like I said, unless you're going to interrogate the space in which you're bringing these people in, nothing is going to change. Those people will eventually be driven out.
When you say
because of
interrogate the space,
experiences
you
of
mean
racism.
change the culture into which they're landing?
Yeah, exactly. Look at the levels of institutional racism that are present in your organisation, in your company. How, if there are experiences of racism, how can individuals anonymously kind of complain about that? What is happening at a senior management level? I called an institutional racism review of my own organisation. Now, I saw that in many ways, I'll be honest with you, black people dealt with the weight of that, and the consequences were not empowering because, again, how the review was conducted, the involvement of the power and privilege from the top, in which way the solutions, if you will, were implemented was hugely problematic. And there were certain voices that were louder than others. So I think that, like you said, it is definitely a long-term process, but unless we see policy around this, even coming out of the likes of Parliament.
So
on the
is
question
it
of
lip service?
racism.
I mean, and I'd asked you to consider both of your positions, both from ethnic minorities and both with the title diversity. Somebody sort of saying, that's the right person.
No, in my case, I came up through television, and so therefore I have a lot of background in and merit in the work that I do.
It never occurred to you that that might be the case?
That I was chosen for...
No, we're talking about a job about diversity, therefore they had to get somebody in from a...
Well, I can speak for myself. I had, my title only changed a year ago. My expertise is marketing and communications. And my title only changed last year when it just so happened that organically, most of the projects I was working on happened to have diversity as a running theme through them. So it sort of made sense for me to change my own title. But I do think absolutely not. It's not, just a head of diversity title or any similar title does not at all need to have someone from an ethnic background to make it work.
Do we need, this is for all of you, do we need more Hindus? More people from Church of Latter-day Saints? Do we need more people from Rasta backgrounds?
Look, I think...
Or are you side then,
no,
as though I completely missed the point?
Because I feel like you're taking the point that we're trying to make out of the argument, like you're reducing it to something really, really.
But okay, maybe I'm trying to.
It's not about
maybe I'm trying to reflect what people out there might be saying.
It's about one of each being able to have as much access to the opportunities that are present as somebody like you, and that's the point we're trying to make. And the problems.
And it matters in advertising as much as or more than elsewhere.
It matters across the board, but I don't think the focus should be advertising. This is why we have to bring it back to wider questions. Why is it that you champion diversity and yet expect the individuals that come from those backgrounds to be depoliticized? The very reason they were never in that space to begin with is because of racism, and that is a political question. How do you expect them to be present and to be silent, to not have been angry at settler colonialism and legal occupation that exists on this earth? How can you not expect them, to be angry at white nationalists marching in the most powerful president in the world, not condemning their existence, let alone, the death of a woman as a consequence?
And you've made the points very, very strongly, but what I'm still getting back to is when I next watch an advert for a train set or Lego on the TV, should I be thinking, because there's somebody who looks like me promoting it, should I be thinking about the problems of our colonial past? Or, hang on, what?
No, in fact, I don't think that you should be, you are not in the...
Or would you be thinking about the problems of Britain's colonial past, if not me?
No, I'm not thinking that when I'm looking at an advert. I am thinking, when I'm looking at an advert, I'm looking at what is it you're trying to sell me. End of story. Yeah. And so that's what that's what most people are looking at. But the problem comes when you get big, massive mistakes, Dove, Nivea, H&M, coming at you because there is, as Malay was saying...
They shoot themselves in the foot by doing that, don't they? And therefore
because there is no diversity at the sign-off period of advertising. It is still all white and male. And because there is no diversity, somebody will sign off a racist advert and say that's okay because they don't have the experience of that racism when they were younger. Yes, things have gotten better. there's still a lot to do. There's still, I mean, if H&M can come out with that, you know, coolest monkey in the jungle, have you ever been called a monkey? I'm sure you haven't, in a derogative way. I have. So I felt that. And so what happens here is that people who look like you on that level haven't felt that. And so they wouldn't know necessarily that that is offensive. But I do. And so when I see that, that's a mistake, and that's going to make me feel, do I really want to go in and work in, buy something from H&M again?
Thank you. I'm sorry. We'll have to carry on this outside when we're over a cup of tea. But if half the adverts we watch were as interesting as this discussion, I'm sure we'd have people glued to their seats. They would never turn it off. Plurality, I'm sorry. We'll talk out there. Plurality, does it bring any problems, or is it the answer? I think you've heard some very interesting views at the round table here today. Thank you to all of my guests for coming on. From me, David Foster, and the team, bye for now.